Thank you, sir. May I now request Dr. Viral Singh to give you the address of this occasion.
Professor Pillai, Professor Mia, participants, experts, and some young friends also that I see in the corner there. Morning to you. First of all, apologies to you, to all of you, and particularly Professor Pillai from our Minister, Shri Vailar Ravi, who was scheduled to be the chief guest here, and you have to manage with me as a fill-in. Truly, as Professor Pillai was just mentioning, coming to IGNOU, for me, I happen to be from Delhi. I was born here, I live here, I work here, but I have never been to IGNOU, so it was really an eye-opener. As you say, it's a quiet, hidden secret. But in many ways, when I thought about it, Professor Pillai, it made me think that IGNOU is like the diaspora. It's a quiet, hidden secret, and in most countries, the diaspora is very small compared to the host country, but it punches far beyond its weight. And that, in a sense, is what IGNOU is doing, particularly with now 40 countries. You mentioned 40 countries. 40 countries that they've gone beyond borders, and that is diasporic in a sense. So congratulations on setting up and running such a wonderful institution, and of course this conference. This is really, in fact, one of my colleagues yesterday in our meeting was saying that how is it that IGNOU has organized this conference and we in the Ministry of Overseas Indian Affairs have not actually thought of and done this conference. And that's a tribute to IGNOU, and therefore we, through one of our institutions, are supporting this conference, because we do believe it's really a very important and essential area that is being looked at. And I'm very happy to hear that you may be establishing your Center for Diasporic Studies, and I do hope it can actually come up all around the world actually, and also in a lot of Indian universities. We are now finding, in fact I say this rather openly, that one of the most important issues of the 21st century is actually going to be migration. It's not yet recognized. We all talk about globalization. Globalization is a given today. You don't need to talk anymore about it. And all the controversies of globalization actually led to it becoming a byword. Similarly, the controversies of migration will make sure that migration becomes the byword in a few years' time. And diaspora, as we all know, is just another word for migration. In fact, the very term diaspora, as you're all well aware, actually had connotations of traumatic and forced exile and this so-called desire for homeland. But it's gone far beyond that. And today, it's a concept, it's a generic concept really of a transnational population. And in that sense, I believe India represents very strongly that context of a transnational population. You know that India, we calculate, has something from 27 to 30 million people outside the borders of India. And this is colossal. And it actually, we count them in 189 countries. I don't know how 3 of them have got left out, but that's a lot. And types of movements from India. But when you look at economic migration, there are 3 distinct ways. We know one of them that you're all aware of, the whole colonial time and the indentured labor that went from India, which was colossal, which is the single largest such movement of people anywhere across the globe. That was an economic migration. And in fact, as I sometimes joke about this, there's an office that got established when the British, after slavery was abolished, they had started the whole concept of indentured labor from India. They set up an office called Protector General of Emigrants in 1837. That office exists till today. It's in my office. It's probably the oldest surviving office in the world or something. But still right. So the concept of protecting and looking after the welfare of migrants who move out was a responsibility taken by government, and it is that responsibility that remains till today, and that it is that which has led to what India then formed and made into what we refer to as the Ministry of Overseas Indian Affairs. It's a responsibility of both the migrants as well as the diasporic communities overseas to enhance the engagement and to protect the welfare of the migrants that move. So this concept is a unique concept, and India, as some of you may be aware, is only the 11th country in the world to actually have a diaspora ministry. In most other places, it's either dealt with by the Foreign Affairs or the Labour Ministry or something or the other. But we decided consciously 7 years ago that we would have a separate ministry. So I was just mentioning the first wave was the economic migration or the indentured labour that went out. Then we have the second major wave, which is post-independence, which is of course the large movement from a lot of countries in South Asia to the Gulf, which is workers and unskilled and semi-skilled large movement, and that's a temporary movement because that's a migration that rotates, it comes back, it's more in the form of a circular migration. And then you have the third wave, which again would have started somewhere around the 60s but continues to this day, which is the large number of professionals and more other skilled workers that went out basically to the West, basically to Europe, to UK, to the US, to Canada, Australia. That wave continues even till today. And finally, those are the three historical waves that we record. But the most interesting wave is the one which is beginning now, which Professor Mia just referred to, the return migration. India is today recording probably the world's highest number of return professionals. It's a unique phenomenon which is taking place. We have statistics that show to us that something like 100,000 people, professionals, are actually coming back to the country on an annual basis. That is a phenomenal contribution to the local economy. So, in a sense, this is probably the most interesting of the waves of migration, but it also shows that the policies of engagement with diaspora are beginning to flow in and result in this kind of a higher level of engagement. And of course, if we look at the Indian diaspora, we have to also recognize that because of the fact of these different waves that move from India, the types of issues and the types of engagement with the diasporic communities have to be perforce different. And in that sense, we look at two particular areas, and in a sense it was also our sort of legal and formal system that recognize these two different ways. One is the persons of Indian origin. This is the old diasporic communities who have now settled and become permanent citizens, and in fact you have the world's first woman Indian diaspora chief Prime Minister, which is in Trinidad and Tobago. You've had, of course, other Indian diaspora Prime Ministers or Governor Generals or Presidents in different countries. So that's the old diaspora, and the new diaspora is basically the one which is post-independence, who we refer to as those having the OCI cards, or the Overseas Citizens of India card scheme. That so politically and socially and formally also we recognize these two distinct waves, but though we do try to treat the diasporic issues as one, but we know that there is a difference between that, and therefore our engagement in terms of economic, social, cultural has to be somewhat different in addressing these diasporic communities. Now, as I was mentioning, India was one of the first few nations who recognized the importance of this connection, and after the report of the high-level committee which went in the early 2000, by 2003 we had established this thing called the Ministry of Overseas Indian Affairs, which some of me and my colleagues are now part of. Now, amongst the significant, or let us say important initiatives that this ministry has been able to do, and why I'm referring to them today is because you're discussing a diasporic and developmental issues. And India is an example of how some of these key initiatives can actually have a tremendous impact on this dual engagement that we are talking about. Amongst the several initiatives that our ministry has done, I'll just mention a few of them. for your consideration and possible discussions later. One is what I was just referring to, the concept of recognizing, giving some formal recognition to the diasporic communities overseas. Now, many countries have done this by giving dual citizenship. India did not, consciously India decided not to give dual citizenship. There are several reasons for it, I don't want to get into those. But we gave something which is very close. It's called the Overseas Citizen of India scheme. By this, we give basically economic rights, social rights, cultural rights, which means lifetime visa, lifetime residency, lifetime employment rights in India, as well as purchasing of properties in India, but we do not give political rights. So that was the one right which was kept out, but this giving of the OCI card turned out to be actually a runaway success by many estimation. It was started very recently in 2007, and we've already given 1 million cards to our, if you look at the OCI, the sort of second level, or the second level of migrants that went out from India, which are around, I would say about 10 million. So we've covered 10% of them already. So it is really a runaway success. The second very important, I would say, successful initiative that our ministry was able to do is we formed something called the Overseas Indian Facilitation Center. This is a one-stop economic engagement body. It's a public-private partnership between the ministry and CII, which is our Confederation of Industry. It's our single largest industry body. So the industry body and the ministry, that's government, joined hands to form something called OIFC, Overseas Indian Facilitation Center. This runs a 24-hour-by-7 website, question answer, whatever, health center, help desk, and they get a very large number of hits at a global level of people wanting to know about India, legal issues, taxation issues, investment issues, whatever it is. It's proved to be very, very successful and helps us to connect and remain in contact with our diaspora. The second or the third, I would say, initiative, which is again proven to be very successful, is what we refer to as the Indian Council for Overseas Employment. It's basically a think tank. It's a migration think tank. In fact, that's the body which is partially sponsored this particular conference that you're doing. And you will hear the CEO, I think, tomorrow sometime. This think tank is again proven to be of great use to us, because in this entire area of migration and diasporic studies, we basically need policy research, which is what this conference is all about. But you need policy research at the national level, because you need to influence national policies. And we have been able to do that by having our own think tank, and of course using other institutions also. We support something, we support academic studies in something like about almost 7 to 8 institutes, 4 of them in India and 4 overseas, where we commission research in the area of migration and diasporic studies. Again, this is a unique thing which a government ministry is doing. And I'm very happy about your mention of a diasporic research center here. We would certainly like to support that in some manner, because it is a key area that we all need to work at. Besides this, we have also set up something called the India Development Foundation. This is to channelize philanthropic work or philanthropic initiatives into India. So it's a government-sponsored body, which is the India Development Foundation for Overseas Indians. And we are registering them as charities in different parts of the world to funnel, as I was mentioning, contributory or charity work, philanthropic work into India. And finally, I would just like to mention, of course there are lots of other things, but I'll just mention only one of them. We are setting up, again, a very unique foundation, something called the Parvasi Bharatiya Kendra. That's a Hindi word which basically means a diasporic center or a diaspora center in India, in Chanakyapuri, where all the embassies are. We're setting up a major institute which is presently under construction, which will be a permanent research and engagement institute for any people who go in and out of New Delhi from anywhere in the world. So we will make that into a major center for for research, for training, for awareness building, for cultural interconnect and everything else. So these are some of the key things we have done, because we believe that India already is and is going to be in the future a major country in this whole issue or in this whole context of migration. We are a transit country, we are a sending country, we are a recipient country. It's in this, since this is going to be a major issue, as I'm just mentioning, in the whole globalized world that we are talking about, India must play an important role in that policy debate at the global level. I will, of course, refer to Professor Mia was just now mentioning about a major issue of brain drain. I'm only mentioning it because he mentioned it, so I thought I should comment on it. It's a very serious issue, and it has led to a depletion of resources in a large number of developing countries. But for India, we have always had a different take on it, and that is the reason I'm mentioning it. We have formally or even informally never really referred to or made an issue of what we call brain drain. We have rather been emphasizing for several years now what we refer to as brain gain, because we found two substantive points which I think are important for a conference such as yours to look at. One, we found that by the fact of migration and the fact of persons moving from Indian borders overseas, and let me again put you another very important policy perspective. The government of India does not promote emigration. However, we recognize it as a democratic right of every Indian citizen to hold an Indian passport and travel where he wishes and travel back whenever he wishes to. And therefore, we will facilitate emigration, but we will not promote it. And in facilitating immigration, we have found that the country has benefited phenomenally. As many of you are aware, India now records the world's highest remittances. Last year it was $54 billion, which is the highest in the world. And this particular year it will be even higher than that. And this is despite the economic slowdown around the world. Now, what does this remittance do? You have a separate session and you're going to be discussing it. But I'll tell you what we have found. We have found that this is one of the major instruments for actual inclusive growth. You see, these are not government programs. This is not FDI which comes and sets up one industry and that's the end of it. This goes to thousands and lakhs of people. It accounts for something like 20% of state domestic product of a state like Kerala for us, something like 10% of Punjab. And this is money that comes into the hands of individuals who can then use it for health services, who can use it for educational services, who can use it for local domestic expenditure, and who can contribute to even things like local property market and fundings and what have you. So it's a major contribution to the local economy. This has been the greatest benefit of emigration from India, which we see as a developmental impact on the country itself. And of course, the second larger reason why we don't mention or we don't think that brain drain has been an issue, and for us it's actually brain drain, is because India has emerged as, or Indians have emerged as the knowledge diaspora of the world. They are the ones that brought the IT revolution to India. They are the ones that we could connect with virtually. Today you don't need the diaspora to come back and sit in your home state. Today the diaspora needs to be connected with you, and we showed how that can happen in the whole IT and ICT world. They are the ones, they were the ambassadors of India, they're the ones who brought us business, brought us software connectivity, and connected Indian scientists and Indian IT engineers across the world on the other side. And they are today also very much part of this return migration that we are talking about. And it's a return migration which may be circular in nature. Today a professional can be in New York one day, in London the next, Bangalore the third, and Singapore the fourth. This is the reality of 21st century globalization, where migration and diaspora communities themselves are going to move on a constant basis. So it's a virtual engagement also which is as important as physical engagement, and we have been attempting to promote that. I'm sure that in your conference today you will come up with a lot of more ideas and a lot of particularly suggestions for further research, because we strongly support the idea that policy research is an extremely important area in migration and diaspora. And therefore, I hope that you will share this with us and also help us in furthering our own policy discourse in this area. Thank you very much.